What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Femme Kyuubi is obsessed with Naruto? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. For the majority of his miserable existence, Uzumaki Naruto had always been known as the #1 hyperactive ninja. Not once has he showed anyone his weak side, not once did he burst under the unbearable pressure. He was what most people would call a naive little man who knew less than his share of common sense. That, however, was all about to change. One very seductive female admirer, secret lover, was about to educate him in the ways of intercourse and what it would mean to forever obtain the one thing that the young man was missing in his life. A demon that loved him. Naruto was still single at the beaming age of a swift 17 years. He had no one to share his life with, nor did anyone dare to share theirs with him. The villagers harbored hatred for him. It was something that, as more time passes, the sorer it would get. Naruto had more than his share of brutal beatings when he was young. Even to this day people still give him glares that could cripple. It always made him uneasy. Naruto had never done anything that deserved such treatment. Other people committed crimes, but never got anything close to what he received. Vandalized property, smashed windows, nightly beatings. It had all become routine for the young dreamer. Tired of complaining about his conditions, Naruto took to changing himself. The only way anything was going to be different was if he took a stand. Training under a rigorous schedule, he had gained some major improvements. An extremely well-toned physique, loss of baby fat, and a new appearance altogether had ultimately made the man the top bachelor of his village for the past 5 years. Attractively tall and slender, Naruto had a feminine build. Naruto's hair had grown over the years, it was now barely past knee length. He had gotten quite tired of the same hairstyle and decided that a change was in order. According to him, it was more mature. Well, whatever the reason, Naruto instantly became more popular with the female population because of it. For a while, life for Naruto went back to being as normal as he could have it. That was when it became even better. Tsunade adopted him. It was sort of strange at first. He had never taken the fifth to be a mother type. When asked why she did such a thing, she went with, "You've never been accepted by anyone, I want to be there for you." Hearing this, Naruto felt indebted. Tsunade was taking a huge risk in taking him in. It could very well mean the end of her career as Hokage after all. Little did he know, however, that he was about to meet his secret admirer. Once Naruto was under the loving guidance of Tsunade, his old habits immediately died. Whether it was willingly or unwillingly, one by one his likes and dislikes change. He no longer wore his orange jumpsuit, for it was thrown out by Tsunade the day he moved into her house. Instead, a white t-shirt, dark blue shinobi pants, and a bandana of pure red were forced on him. His headband also had some slight altercations. No longer securing it around his forehead, it usually found its place around his arm. That was of course, unless told to do otherwise. He was Tsunade's little piece of sunshine whenever they were alone together. For years, Tsunade had been trying desperately to get her boy married off with some of the fine specimens that adorned the Konoha streets. Take for instance, Anko and Kurenai. In fact, they still tried everything to snatch Naruto to be theirs forever. Naruto, however, had other business on his youthful mind. Training 24/7 for example, and every so often, trying to sneak a couple of bowls of ramen whenever he could. Tsunade still tires to pry Naruto away from his favorite food and induce upon him a liking for more sophisticated dining. The new multi-level restaurant that Choji's clan opened up was such a place. They do pride themselves on their cuisine. Inside Naruto's mind, "Naruto-kun, I want to see you from outside these stuffy confines. Naruto-kun, you will be my and my only." Naruto's secret admirer smirked as she seductively sucked on her index finger. After many years of being sealed inside Naruto's body, Kyuubi had not only grown immensely fond of her host, but came to acquire one key piece of information about her Naruto-kun. He loved demon woman. Having knowledge of this, the Kyuubi immediately brightened up. She fits the description of being a female demon herself. Smirking at this fact, she knew that it wasn't going to be too difficult. All she had to do was wait until the right time to break out. The rest would handle itself. Contrary to popular speculation, the Kyuubi was indeed a female to begin with. She was not at all a bloodthirsty demon. Actually, quite opposite really. She was like any regular girl. rarely showing her discontent around others. There were only two conditions in which she would become berserk. Number 1, if she was provoked, and 2, unless of course her Naruto-kun wanted her to be. In fact, she was a very caring woman that solely belonged to her host. She was antisocial and sometimes horny, but that was in her nature. It's so unfair. I live inside you every day and yet I can never get any closer to you. In a spark of both mischief and determination, Kyuubi set up her plan. That's it. I have to break out of this lamenting confinement. With that, Kyuubi smirked and set to work. Outside in the real world, Naruto-kun, stop moving. A very irritated Tsunade shouted as she smacked her boy's head. Sorry Tsunade-sama. Naruto retorted defensively to avoid being hit again. Standing at attention, he daren't goof off again. That's better, now I will teach you the final stages of your medical training. As Tsunade said this, she coursed some healing chakra through the palms of her hands. With precise control and chakra manipulation, she morphed it into an absolute offensive style. The lime green color took on some eerie changes as it pulsed periodically. I will now teach you how to kill with medic chakra. No sooner had she said this did she smash 100 pieces of moderately sized wood planks. Naruto stared in amazement, letting his curiosity run free with possibilities. Tilting his head, Naruto questioned the specific execution behind that technique. Tsunade-sama, how did you do that? As if furthering his adorable expression, he put his index finger to his lips. Finding his antics extremely likable, Tsunade demonstrated her appreciation. Walking over, she hugged her son, giving a nice hair roughing in the process. Naruto, I have taught you almost everything I know. From ninjutsu to genjutsu, even medic jutsu. Once you learn how to kill using medic jutsu, I will have something that I want to talk to you about. Tsunade then turned and headed back as she showed Naruto exactly how to gather the desired chakra levels and then how to release it for a crushing impact. Naruto took no time mastering the technique that his mom had shown him. Going through the steps again and again as a proud mother stood watching her son with teary eyes. Inside Naruto's mind, oh how cute. I loved his face so much when he tilted it. Kyuubi laughed as she brushed her perfect fingers through her long radiantly red strands of hair. Her body was perfectly proportioned and she had S that could rival Tsunade's. Her legs were long and smooth with absolutely no blemishes. The small patch of hair just above her sweet spot looked visibility soft. I'll be out very shortly, Naruto-kun. Kyuubi's body was unique in that, she was born with 4 purple stripes altogether, 2 on her inner thighs and 2 on the sides of her stomach. Her eyes were a dark red and heavily coated with seductive purple eyeliner. On her head, 2 cutely shaped fox ears wiggled while an elegant tail swayed behind her. This was one fine female demon that had her sights set on Naruto. She wouldn't take no for an answer. Her beautiful feet were further complemented by finger and toenails of a creamy white, each coated perfectly even. Kyuubi wore a very skimpy fur skirt with a matching top to conceal her S. She didn't want to cause Naruto pain, but if causing him pain was the only way to be with him, then she had to do it. Whispering a small teary eyes apology, Kyuubi commenced her plan. Outside Naruto's mind, Naruto was still practicing his technique when suddenly his whole body heated up. He felt lightheaded. His stomach churned inside out and within seconds, he was on the ground convulsing rather furiously. From the inside, Kyuubi's expression was one of pure torment. She really wanted to use a less extreme method. Naruto-kun in pain was not something she wanted to witness. So deciding to speed up the process of her release, Kyuubi worked even more efficiently. This course of action immediately caused Naruto to experience something very unpleasant. Tsunade, noticing that her son wasn't feeling well, immediately called on some of his friends from nearby to take him to the Konoha hospital. She herself soon accompanied them. Tsunade intended to personally inspect the cause of her son's irregularity. It was just too mind-boggling that something like this could happen, out of the blue. Gathering her training equipment for later, she jumped into the trees following in hot pursuit. Tsunade didn't understand how this was possible. One minute Naruto was doing well, the next he's collapsed. It was all too strange. At Konoha Hospital, give him some room, Neji shouted as he glanced a worried look towards his best friend. He was sweating a storm. Naruto has never ever been sick once in his life. The suddenness of this problem was a bit unsettling. Clear out of the way, Sasuke declared as he supported Naruto's underside. Sasuke had once betrayed the village of Konoha. In a blind chase for power, he goes with Orochimaru for nearly 2 years. Throughout that time, he had begun to see the error of his ways. When the second attempt at bring him back arose, he gladly went back with his best friend. In many ways, Sasuke considered Naruto his brother and probably his only available family. Since Itachi died after Sasuke had confronted him while under the guidance of Orochimaru. Sasuke had now mastered the Sharingan. He was able to read his opponent's moves perfectly, giving him an overwhelming advantage while in battle. After his brother's death, he became the next true heir of the Sharingan. Naruto's friends had taken him to a secluded room followed shortly by the Hokage. Not caring for the disruption she would cause, Tsunade charged through the door. "Is my baby all right?" Tsunade's expression was that of worry as she glanced down at his perspiration. "Everyone clear out of the room, now." No sooner had Tsunade ordered the dismissal of her fellow Junin shinobi had she began to assess the condition of her Naruto-kun. "You hang in there, you hear me?" Her voice was cracked, a mixed tone of desperation and agitation. Tsunade had gone through her checkups to find that something was defiantly not right. Her boy had a fever of 123 degrees and was on the verge of convulsing yet again. "Crap, this isn't good." Tsunade hurriedly rushed out of the room. Whatever this new upset was, she knew she couldn't act fast enough on her own. She needed some assistance. Shizune was the only available person right now. Sakura would have been her next choice, but she was on a mission right now. She had limited resources to choose from. Just then, a blinding flash of red caught her divided attention. With a grunt, Tsunade rushed back towards the hospital. Inside Naruto's room, after the red flash had subsided, it also succeeded in bringing out the Kyuubi. Her plan had worked, and now standing before a very shocked Naruto was the most gorgeous woman he would ever lay eyes on. The Kyuubi's beauty surpassed all other females. She had no comparison. Catching her host's dumbfounded expression, Kyuubi attempted to pull him from his daydreaming. Her soft lyrical voice ranged through the enclosure. "Naruto-kun, I can finally be with you now." With that, Kyuubi jumped Naruto, hugging him like a cute plushie. She humped every part of his body in a show of suppressed affection. Kyuubi's been waiting a long time for this. He didn't know what to do. More specifically, Naruto was still trying to register what just happened. "Okay, after that flash, this hot chick appears and dry humps me, what is this?" Not really getting the desired reaction from her man, Kyuubi decided to get his attention. "Is this how you treat someone who's been sealed inside you all this time?" "Naruto-kun," she prolonged her pronunciation of his name as she shook his body. "Someone who's been sealed inside my body, what is she talking about?" Then realization dawned on him. He knew exactly what she meant now. "You're the Kyuubi?" Naruto's excitement at the fact that the Kyuubi was a hot chick was impeded by the fact that he was freaked out by now. "Naruto, don't you remember me?" She was hit rather hard. He didn't remember her after 17 years of living, eating, sleeping, and training with him. It was surprisingly a bittersweet moment. All Naruto could do was hold her with increased strength as he was too bewildered to let go of her, not that she minded. "Naruto, I forced myself out of my imprisonment just to see you." The Kyuubi then buried her face in his chest and started sobbing uncontrollably. "I was so lonely without you. I did this just to be with you, please recognize me." The Kyuubi cried as she begged for his acceptance. It took a few minutes for Naruto to register what had just happened. Until finally he came to his senses and shouted out, "Holy crap, you're the Kyuubi." Realizing who she was, Naruto couldn't help his next action. Desperately trying to push her away from him, Naruto struggled in vain. Seemingly rejected, the Kyuubi only cried harder as she latched herself onto his shirt. "Naruto-kun, I love you so much. Why are you doing this to me?" The broken scene of the Kyuubi in front of Naruto finally hit his soft spot. He cradled her in his arms and gently soothed her back. Taking in her heavenly scent, Naruto had immediately succeeded in terminating her water show. "Shish, it's all right, I won't reject you." Naruto was still unsure of why he wasn't freaking out at the demon in his arms. It did devastate his village, yet somehow he knew he was doing the right thing. He stroked her back as he gently muttered words of encouragement. He just hated to see a vulnerable woman in front of him. "Naruto-kun, please, I love you so much." Don't seal me away. I want to share my life with you, if you will let me do so. Kyuubi blissfully muttered under the soothing touch. It was so comfortable that she could fall asleep and not awaken until hours later. I don't have a choice in the matter, I'll have to let you live with me. You have no one else to turn to. However, we will have to change your name, we can't call you Kyuubi. The villagers will hate you and me even more so than they do now. Naruto's voice had a hint of rage hidden within them. Then care to tell me what my new name is, Naruto-sama? Kyuubi asked playfully. Did Naruto just hear her right? Did she just call him Naruto-sama? Kyuubi, from now on, while in public your name will be Kyusai. This way they won't know it's you that's the demon. Naruto kept his voice a mere whisper. He didn't want other people eavesdropping on their conversation. Hi Naruto-sama. Then from now on, I shall be known as Kyusai. In return, all I want you to do is let me stay with you and also acknowledge my undying feelings for you. Kyuubi's voice was full of playfulness now as she rested on her Naruto-kun's strong chest. Whatever you say, Kyuubi, Naruto replied as he gently slipped one arm behind her back and brought her lips into his, sharing their first of many French kisses yet to come. As Tsunade approached the door, she ordered her Junins to check on Naruto after that display of light. All she got were perverted grins with equally perverted blushes. This was going to be interesting. Their lips met and never parted again, each taking in the sweet aroma of their counterparts, never ceasing to take a breather as if once they part ways they will never again encounter the perfection that is each other. Kyuubi had finally found her eternal bliss that was her Naruto, but still one thing remained on her mind that tormented her thoughts. Did her Naruto-kun feel the same way that she did about him? She was too caught up in the heat of the moment to have noticed that Naruto had unfortunately released her from his loving grasp. Kyuubi, I also needed to tell you that while you're in public vacancy, you will have to retract your tail and ears. Naruto let out a slight chuckle as he continued, it's hardly normal for a human to attain animal-like features. Naruto released Kyuubi and looked into her mesmerizing ruby orbs that had little marks of black within them. Naruto-kun, I have told you that I would be yours and nobody else's, so whatever you want, I'll do. Kyuubi then attempted to snuggle back into her Naruto-kun's arms but was rudely interrupted by someone possessing chocolate orbs and blonde hair trying to barge into the door. Noticing the furious turning of the door handle, presumably from a very agitated Tsunade, Naruto took the immediate initiative to hide Kyuubi. Quick, get under my bedsheets, Kyuubi. Before Kyuubi could have a say in the matter, her whole body was flung under Naruto's bedsheets, which after having the opportunity to be graced by his presence, smelled just like him. It was a lingering pale lavender essence that made Kyuubi flustered at the first sign of it. This was partly due to the closeness between her and her current oblivious counterpart, but it was also because Naruto subconsciously placed a very warm hand on her behind while his other hand rested upon her waist. It was indeed very comforting for her. Naruto was her protector. Mere seconds later, Tsunade came sprinting in to check on her son. Are you alright, Naruto-kun? Tsunade inquired quizzically, yet a bit worried. Naruto, who at this time felt that Kyuubi's head was just above his private section, was also somewhat blushing. Nothing is wrong. Naruto almost shouted the last part due to the fact that Kyuubi's hand had just moved to envelope his waist while still managing to somehow stay hidden under the bedsheets. Tsunade, who had taken account of Naruto's elevation of tone, looked at him suspiciously along the edges of her eye. You seem to be really agitated today, Naruto. Is something bothering you? Tsunade seemed to catch another of Naruto's many signs of uneasiness this morning. Moving to Naruto's bedside, she leaned down so that Naruto's ear was at her eye level. Taking a few seconds to adjust her voice, she whispered a very motherly tone into Naruto's ear. Don't be afraid to come and talk to me, Naruto-kun. I'll always have time for you. Tsunade then straightened up while she smoothed the wrinkles on her clothing, afterwards proceeding to the exit of the room. When she got there, she turned around one final time and looked at her Naruto with his trademark grin plastered on his face. Smiling, Tsunade blew a kiss to her son as she took her leave. Talking ensued on the other side of the door, and soon the voices became but a distant blur to the two people inside. Upon realization that all is well, Naruto signaled for the release of the Kyuubi from within the bed sheets. The first thing that Kyuubi did was envelope her Naruto-kun within a loving grasp, which shocked him, but later he eased his way into her sugary embrace. Thanks for protecting me, Naruto-kun, and you have a fragrance that no one else has, the kind that makes all demon women fall into an eternal state of tranquility. Kyuubi said with a hint of pain in her voice. The harsh reality was that if she couldn't have her Naruto-kun, then no other demon temptress could. She loved and treasured him beyond all bounds. Thanks, I think. Naruto laughed as he resumed telling Kyuubi how she was supposed to act while in public for a good 10 minutes or so. Outside on one of Konoha's many streets. Let's go back to Tsunade's grand domain for now. I have something I want to give you. Think of it as a present. Naruto told Kyuubi, who at this time was riding on Naruto's back while Naruto secured 2 hands upon her warm thighs that craved for the gentle touch of her blonde angel. Naruto took extra care in concealing her tail and ears with some bedsheets he took from the hospital, after making sure that they were free of infectious diseases. They were leaping with extreme speed from rooftop to rooftop, all the while Kyuubi's hair kept on getting into Naruto's face, preventing him from getting a proper view of his surroundings. Kyusai, can you try and keep your beautiful hair under control? Naruto's voice was soft and gentle, even though he was a bit annoyed inside. It took Kyuubi a moment to figure out that that was the name she was supposed to be called while in public, so deciding that pursuing this matter further was not an option, since she didn't want to disappoint her Naruto-kun. She immediately responded, "Oh, sure thing, Naruto-kun." Kyuubi obeyed without question as she lifted one hand off of Naruto's strong yet slender shoulder and brushed her hair back. Afterwards she returned to resting her head on his back. They had arrived at Tsunade's grand domain within less than 20 minutes of time as Naruto gently let Kyuubi slide off his back, yet every time their flesh touched each other's, both of them would immediately become flustered beyond belief. Sorry about that, Kyuubi-chan. Unbeknownst to Naruto, he had just used chan accompanied at the end of her lyrical name that strung together so perfectly. Kyuubi, however, caught her Naruto's supposed mistake as she realized that maybe Naruto did have immense feelings for her after all. That maybe, just maybe, she was right in her assumption. She truly loved her Naruto, and it would break her heart if her assumption was incorrect. Naruto had taken out an extra key given to him by Tsunade the day he moved into her house upon his adoption. He slid the key slowly through the slot in the door as he gently turned his wrist, opening the door to reveal a gigantic dome. Taking one glance at the superstructure, anyone would be able to tell that it was for the rich. A roof plastered with creamy white spotless coating of an extravagant paint, grand hallways, and spacious rooms. All of these were very intricately designed for the utmost pleasure. Come with me, Kyuubi-chan. Naruto signaled for Kyuubi, who immediately wrapped an arm around his. Naruto led Kyuubi through the entrance, and upon Kyuubi's amazement she noticed that the whole house was absolutely spotless. Gigantic rooms with equally gigantic doors adorned the walls of the house. Upon further inspection, Kyuubi found that it was 4 stories, the biggest one in the entire Konoha village. She was to say the least very impressed that her Naruto could snag himself such a grand house. No, such a grand palace to be exact. How do you like it, Kyuubi-chan? Naruto inquired at the awe-stricken Kyuubi. I'm amazed, Naruto-kun. Kyuubi answered, all the while still admiring the towering house that stared her in the face. Anyway, Kyuubi-chan, I'll show you to my room. Afterwards we can talk in private there. Naruto led Kyuubi up the never-ending staircases while grasping hard on her hand, managing yet again to send Kyuubi to a utopia. When they entered Naruto's room, which wasn't anything special except for the fact that it was by far the largest room in the house and filled with ninja scrolls, presumably for ninjutsu purposes. I can see you train hard, Naruto-kun. That's just what I would expect from you. Kyuubi said while she slowly and regretfully let her Naruto-kun go as she attempted to examine the numerous scrolls lying on the desks. Yes, I do train a lot to fill up my spare time. Regardless, I have something to give you. Naruto walked to his closet and took out a velvety soft snowy white silk top that just so happens to be all see-through. Not serving its purpose of covering up Kyuubi's rather sizable cleavage, but it would have to do since that was all Naruto had at the moment. He then proceeded to take out 4 more strands of silk of the same material. This was also part of his present for Kyuubi-chan. Finally he took out a pink strand of silk as he closed his closet. Come here, Kyuubi, Naruto said as he indicated for the Kyuubi to sit on his lap while he put his presents to good use. Kyuubi, knowing what her Naruto-kun was thinking, was only too happy to oblige in the invitation. It meant that she could be closer to her Naruto-kun. Taking a seat on Naruto's lap, she leaned back into his chest while Naruto maneuvered his hands softly over her ass, attempting to slip a silk top over her. Once that was finished, Naruto moved to take Kyuubi's right arm. Kyuubi was totally in her own little piece of Naruto heaven as she tried to suppress her overwhelming urge to both moan and release her now overflowing juices onto the floor. She was with her true love right now, and nothing could give her the sense of security and comfort that her Naruto could give her. Naruto tied the 4 strands of silk onto Kyuubi's wrists and ankles respectively, and finally taking the soft pink strand of silk he tied it onto her right thigh. "They're all done, stand and let me see what you look like," Naruto whispered softly into Kyuubi's ear as he signaled for her to stand. She was a bit reluctant to leave her comfy seat, but did as she was told. Timidly tiptoeing to the middle of the room, she gave a little twirl of her body. If it was humanly possible, Naruto's Kyuubi was even more beautiful than she was when she first appeared. The silky white strands upon her ankles and wrists matched her top perfectly, giving her an angelic evening glow. While the pink strand of silk on her right thigh made her look even more seductive than she already did. Naruto was truly lucky, and yet he didn't know it. Kyuubi only had eyes for him and him only. "You look absolutely gorgeous," Naruto couldn't help but compliment her. This made Kyuubi blush deeply as she immediately went back to sitting on Naruto's lap as if afraid to separate with him. "Thank you so much for the present, Naruto-kun." Kyuubi, who was now totally flustered, couldn't comprehend how much love she felt for her man. Suffice to say, she has never experienced what love was like before. "Kyuubi, why don't we go and have some fun? I have the day off today," Naruto whispered softly into her ear, exuding a warm breath that made her quiver in pleasure. "Sure thing, Naruto, anything you want." Kyuubi couldn't disobey him right now. She neither wanted to nor needed to. She knew from the way Naruto has been treating her that he indeed did hold immense love for her in his heart, and just like her he yearned to be with her. His one and only. Likewise, Naruto was Kyuubi's one and only. They both needed each other to survive and no one else. Kyuubi no longer had any doubts in her mind concerning where her Naruto's heart belonged to. She had originally felt that Naruto would like someone else more than her even after all that she did for him, but now she knew better. This only strengthened her desire to be with him and love him with all her heart and soul. "Kyuubi, you alright?" Naruto looked at her with a worried expression on his face. "Oh sorry Naruto-kun. I guess I dazed out for a second there." Kyuubi replied, assuring him that she was fine. "Okay, anyway, if we're going I suggest that we make haste. Tsunade-sama will be back soon, and I usually don't come home until 5 in the evening. It would be suspicious and awkward for me to be back so soon," Naruto explained while he tightened his grip on Kyuubi's slim waist. "Sure thing, let's go." Kyuubi attempted to get up when she was pulled down. "Wait, one more thing. Tsunade still doesn't know about you yet, so for the time being you'll have to sleep in my room. If you want, I could give you my bed." Naruto was a gentleman. He would always offer his comfort for someone's sake. "Oh, sure, I'd love to stay in your room, but if you don't mind I get kind of scared if I'm away from you for too long." Kyuubi knew just what she needed and wanted. "Nice try, Kyuubi-chan, but you'll have to sleep without me by your side for a couple of weeks, at least until I can be sure that Tsunade-sama doesn't find out." "Fine, Naruto-kun, but just make sure that every night you come and say good night to me, okay?" Kyuubi asked as childishly as she could. "Deal," Naruto answered as he enveloped Kyuubi into an embrace. "Anyway, Kyuubi, before we go out, you'll have to conceal your tail and ears. That's if you know how." Naruto now had a more serious look on his usually bright face. "Of course I know how, give me some credit, baby." Kyuubi easily retracted her ears as well as her tail with the use of some of her red chakra. Naruto couldn't help but laugh at the "baby" comment. He still couldn't wrap his head around how fond he had grown of his Kyuubi or the fact that Kyuubi fell for him, but all in all he was extremely glad that they found each other. They would never be seen alone from one another ever again. Heading down the stairs, Naruto retrieved a pair of creamy white slippers. "Hey Kyuubi-chan, try these on. They're really comfortable." Offering the footwear, Kyuubi took it without a second's thought. "Like this, Naruto-kun?" Putting it on, she had instantly become more attractive. In combination with her painted toenails, the slippers really accented her feet's beauty. It was simple yet effective. "Outside, where do you want to go, Kyusai?" Naruto quizzically asked while he intertwined his fingers with that of hers. Anywhere is fine, but one thing, is it okay if I rest my head on your shoulder while we walk? Kyuubi's voice had a hint of hope contained within the deep corridors of inner meaning. Sure, go ahead. Naruto then offered his shoulder, which Kyuubi graciously accepted. Thus, the almost eternal lovers started down the road that lay before them. At the sweet shop, upon entering, Naruto went to the counter and picked out 2 lollipops, figuratively one for him and one for his Kyuubi-chan. He paid the price and bided his farewell to the cashier as he left with Kyuubi clinging onto him. Here you go, Kyusai. Naruto then offered a lollipop to Kyuubi while he attempted to unwrap his lollipop. Kyuubi, taking the lollipop and thanking him for buying it for her, put it slowly and sensually into her mouth. She really knew how to turn her Naruto-kun on. Slowly she circled it around the edges of her lips and licked the tip of it, smothering it with her saliva, before finally taking it fully into her mouth. Just as Naruto was about to put his in his mouth, Kyuubi snatched it away from him and threw it away. Without even apologizing, she brought her mouth into contact with Naruto's as she gently slipped her lollipop into his mouth. Naruto's eyes opened immediately at the sudden amount of pleasure he was feeling, from the sweetness of the candy to the heavenly probing of Kyuubi's tongue in his mouth. He found it impossible to deny Kyuubi what she wanted. It wasn't about the lollipop anymore, it was about the expression of her love towards him, and so easing completely he embraced her as they continued to share the sensual sensation that was their lollipop, completely oblivious to their surroundings. They had both just discovered a new level of relationships now, albeit still not at the lovers' level. It had grown considerably. They would just need a little bit more time together before they would become eternal lovers. For now, however, they just remained in each other's embrace, trying their best to satisfy their hunger for each other. Unbeknownst to neither Naruto nor Kyuubi, someone had caught sight of their affair. They stood there desperately embracing one another, laying passionate kisses that lingered on the other's lips. Both participants in this intimate event wouldn't delay in their actions. One of Naruto's hands moved timidly up towards Kyuubi's hair. Reaching its destination, it immediately began to caress the silk-like substance. Taking in her scent, Naruto only managed to fall deeper into his desire to marry her. Likewise, the Kyuubi was also experiencing a piece of heaven. Her fingers traced Naruto's hard, firm muscles while she continued to kiss her Naruto-kun. Naruto's other hand gently found its next destination, the Kyuubi's behind. Realizing that he hit his mark, Naruto's hand unconsciously gave Kyuubi's ass a gentle squeeze, managing to bring forth a small moan of pleasure from his Kyuubi-chan. I didn't realize that you wanted me so much, Naruto-kun. Kyuubi had a difficult time articulating her speech due to the sensations that were flowing through her body at this moment. Nevertheless, she was extremely joyful from the realization that her Naruto-kun loved and treasured her above all else. Naruto-kun, it would be best if we found some other place to continue our act of intimacy. After all, I wouldn't want anyone to see us out in the open like this. Kyuubi reluctantly pulled away from her Naruto's warm embrace as she stared into his oceanic jewels, only managing to lose herself even further in those intense hot eyes. Yes, that would be the best course of action right now. Engaging in indecent acts in a public vacancy is not desirable. With that, Naruto released Kyuubi from his grasp as he too stared at her ruby orbs that burned so feverishly. Naruto couldn't comprehend where their relationship level stood at this moment. Was it a brother and sister kind of love? It was definitely not a servant and master relationship. He also couldn't call it a lover relationship in his own fear of being rejected by her. Naruto-kun, what's on your mind? Kyuubi had gazed worriedly at her soon-to-be lover, and she couldn't help but inquire that of him, seeing his expression change from one of lustful enjoyment to that of uncertainty. Kyuubi embraced her Naruto-kun and laid her head on his chest in an attempt to reassure him that everything was going to be okay. Feeling the pressure on his chest, Naruto instinctively cradled his Kyuubi-chan's head within his hands, caressing her soft silky hair while taking in her scent, which smelled so sweet. Naruto's embrace tightened around his Kyuubi-chan as he was afraid to let her slip away from him. Naruto-kun, I can feel your pain, my Naruto-sama, please let me assist you. Kyuubi was also getting upset that her Naruto-kun was in anguish. The bottled-up emotions of love for her was really taking effect on him. You can tell me anything that's on your mind. I wish to be one with you in spirit. Kyuubi's warm breath exuded a sense of comfort into Naruto's skin as she continued to whisper words of encouragement to her Naruto-kun. She hoped that he would ask her the one fated question in which she had been waiting for ever since she came out. Kyuubi-chan, I want to Naruto gave up at the last second. He released his Kyuubi completely, taking off in the opposite direction and never gazing back. He was in pain right now. He had finally found his one true love, and yet he lacks the guts to express his feelings of desire for her. She must be crying right now. She wanted to marry him ever since she came out. Yet her one true love, in which she loves with no bounds, lacks what she loved him for: his courage and determination to triumph over all obstacles, and of course for his cuteness and looks. Naruto-kun, why won't you have the courage to ask me? Kyuubi asked in anguish as she sobbed. She would definitely find a way for her Naruto-kun to confess to her, one way or another. She took off after him in a desperate attempt to catch his fleeing essence within her grasp. Spying on the spectacle taking place, a figure stepped out from the intimidating shadows. She had lavender hair and misty pearls. She wore fish netting that covered the majority of her body and had a long skin-colored overcoat as well as leg pads that aided her while on a mission. Smirking at the emotional event that had taken place, she whispered to herself in a barely protruding tone. Seems like I have some competition if I want to make Naruto-kun my. The figure smirked once again as she coated her lips in heavy saliva, thrilled by the prospect of an engaging hunt. Naruto was hurting so badly on the inside. It felt like gravity was pushing down upon him in an attempt to slow him enough so that Kyuubi could catch him. He was a fool. Why did he run away from the one person he treasured above all else? Why did he lack his usual upbeat spirit that his friends and family loved about him? The answer was simple: he was afraid of his lover rejecting his proposal. So all he did was run as gleaming droplets of salty moisture flowed freely from the edges of his eyes. Kyuubi-chan, please forgive me. I don't deserve you. Naruto had to run as far away from her as possible. He couldn't bear with witnessing the hurtful expression that was probably adorned upon the face of his one and only. My Naruto-sama, why are you such a fool when it comes to the aspect of eternal bliss? I have waited so long to be your wife, I wouldn't dream of saying no. Kyuubi's tears also flowed freely as she continued to chase after her desired man in hopes of catching him in time. She was stopped, however, when a female ninja interjected her pursuit. I have seen you with Naruto-kun. You should seriously stop this futile attempt. He would never be with you. Anko, who had been trying to snag Naruto for herself, had to make sure that she eliminated all her competition. Kyuubi was getting desperate. If she didn't make haste, then her only desire would be ripped from her loving hold. She had to get to her Naruto-kun soon or else it would be too late. Kyuubi was in no mood to play games. I don't know who you think you are, but a whore like you who only wants to have intercourse with him could never truly love him like I do. You like him for his looks, but I treasure him for much more. To me he is the person that gives me a purpose. To me he is priceless. You can try to flatter him with your less than desirable body, but that will never work. Kyuubi converged her anguish into burning determination for her Naruto-kun. Lamenting red chakra seeped out from her body. Her eyes seemed to exude burning hatred for the person that dared to stand in front of her. Her furry tail flared into existence, accompanied by her two foxy ears. Her fur stood on edge as the purple markings deepened in color. She was going to show this girl just how serious she was. You better get out of my way, little girl. I'm not in the mood for any disturbances today. Kyuubi's claws expanded in length as she prepared to savagely rip her opponent apart. Her creamy white legs managed to look even whiter after her transformation. Her snow-white slippers, the ones that you have access to in Japanese hotels, seemed to complement her feet even more. Kyuubi's hair also grew in length, managing to reach down past her ankles. What is this eerie chakra? This is too much for me. If she chooses to engage in combat, I will not be able to defend myself. Anko appeared shaken by the sheer amount of chakra released as she shakily drew a kunai from her pouch. Sweat accumulated on her forehead as she cursed under her breath. Get out of my way. I will be with my Naruto whether you like it or not. Kyuubi dashed towards her target, claws outstretched, while still managing to maintain her graceful beauty that surpassed all others. Crap, this isn't good. Anko could only defend herself from the advancing assault as she had no other way to counterattack. That's my Kyuubi-chan's chakra. What is she doing? Naruto appeared panicky as he immediately stopped his childish game of tag and headed towards the opposite direction. I only hope that I make it in time. Naruto's endurance had been greatly cut after Kyuubi had appeared before him. The only possible way for him to retain his energy was if he held on tight to his Kyuubi. On his own, he lacked that ability, and certainly it was beginning to show as vast amounts of sweat accumulated on his forehead. Please let me make it in time. The hellish battle commenced. Anko twirled her kunai in one hand and took a swift swipe at Kyuubi, only for it to be dodged. Kyuubi ducked her head under the imposing strike and took a sweep of the leg. Managing to knock Anko off balance, Kyuubi's claws gripped her neck, squeezing the life out of her. The purple slowly spread into her system. Internal bleeding was taking place, and yet Anko was still stubborn enough to have one last trick up her sleeve. Using her remaining strength, Anko's legs were quickly brought up into a headlock. With the added pressure on Kyuubi's neck, she released Anko from her clutch. Kyuubi's hair draped over Anko's blemish-free thighs, managing to give her a taste of her silky hair. Anko tried to restrain herself from having a blush at the comfortable feeling she was having while sitting on Kyuubi's shoulders. Kyuubi felt disgusting. This girl's flesh was so unappealing to that of her Naruto's soft embrace, like that of an angel's caress. Desperately, she took a bite of Anko's thighs in an attempt to induce pain to Anko. Hoping it was enough to throw her off her shoulders. Feeling the searing pain of fangs sinking into her flesh as well as her own blood tickle down her thighs, Anko had to let go. She felt her chakra being overpowered by Kyuubi. Needing to get away quick, Anko used her opponent's shoulder as a springboard. This was indeed one catfight. Spitting the crude taste out of her mouth in the form of saliva, Kyuubi attempted to end this. "You taste disgusting. You actually mounted me." With that, Kyuubi's chakra flared into existence as she concentrated the majority of it into one final strike. Her claws turned from a creamy white to that of a bloody crimson. "This will end it. I have no time to linger with you." Kyuubi's force was accented by the crackling of the earth underneath her. Her tail swayed in the crisp, clean air as she prepared to give this intruder a taste of pain. On a more positive note, this catfight was taking place in a secluded area in Konoha, so no more mortals will witness the demon in action. This effectively cut down the chance of Kyuubi being found out. As long as she took care of Anko, all will return to normal. "You're a demon." Anko spat as she also tightened her grip on her kunai, attempting to end this with one final strike. "So you have finally realized that, have you? Now you see that there is absolutely no way for you to win." Kyuubi smirked as she signaled the start of combat by springing her legs into a repetitive motion, managing to carry her to her destination. Likewise, Anko, despite her own fear, also charged at Kyuubi. Claws and kunai established contact with flesh. However, it wasn't the desired flesh that had been struck. Realization dawned upon both Kyuubi and Anko that what they planned to hit wasn't harmed. Instead, the subject of their affection was now bleeding out towards them. Naruto had just managed to reach the scene of combat in the nick of time, and without thinking he jumped down and embraced Kyuubi, protecting her from the kunai. Naruto's flesh was totally ripped apart by the sheer force of both his beloved Kyuubi-chan's chakra-enhanced claw and the piercing pain of the thrusting kunai. Blood spurted out of the massive wound. Naruto couldn't hold in the pain anymore as he released a mouthful of blood that he had been trying desperately to hold in. Reminiscent droplets of red-coated Kyuubi as she stood there still stunned by the realization that the one she loved had been hurt by her own deathly claws. Likewise, Anko was also speechless. She hadn't expected that Naruto would jump in front of the assault. The fragile dam that stored all of a female's emotions was breaking. Kyuubi sobbed so hard into her Naruto-kun's chest, licking the wounds that she had caused in hopes of healing them. She buried her head into his loving embrace, crying even harder into his chest. "I know I hurt you, but please don't leave me. I want to be with you. Kyuubi-chan, I don't care what anyone else thinks. The fact of the matter is I love you more than anything. I know that I may have caused you so much pain by running away, but now I'll never run ever again. I love you and will continue to love you as long as I live." With that, Naruto dropped down on one knee. Despite his own searing pain, he continued on. "Kyuubi-chan, will you marry me?" Naruto bit down on his pain as he retrieved a small jewelry box decorated with silver linen. He opened it shakily, and inside was the most beautiful ring Kyuubi had ever laid her waiting eyes on. It was a mixture of both rubies and diamonds arranged together into the shape of a rose. Kyuubi hadn't waited to think about the reply that she would give him and just totally freed herself of the emotional burden and jumped into her Naruto-kun's arms, embracing him hard, licking his wounds while she kissed him. Kyuubi extended her finger so that Naruto could decorate it with the ring. Naruto, obliging with her, slid the ring onto her finger. "Naruto-kun, you don't know how long I have waited for you to ask me that question. I love to." Kyuubi's tail wrapped itself around Naruto's waist to keep him balanced as she laid kiss after kiss over his blood-stained skin. Naruto was desperately trying to hold on, but the blood loss was too great of a physical burden for him as he passed out from the world of the living due to exhaustion. The last thing he remembered was how foolish he had been to not confess to his lover sooner, instead of going through all this. Kyuubi, feeling her husband slip away, had a worried expression, but after further observation she smirked as she realized that he just passed out from the amount of strain induced upon his body. So she just held him in her embrace, brushing his long blonde hair that had the irresistible essence to her. She continued to apply her loving tongue on his wounds, making sure that each time she licked him she would also give him a kiss. This intimate moment between husband and wife was interrupted, however, as a kunai came flying towards them in an attempt to sever their unbreakable connection to each other. Realizing that she still had to be taken care of, Kyuubi slowly let her husband's head rest upon the ground. Kyuubi gently stood as she caught the kunai with her tail. "You just don't want to accept the reality of things, do you?" Kyuubi slowly advanced upon the weakened ninja as she brought out a hand to caress the sweat-stained face. "I will make sure that you never bother me or my husband ever again." With that, her creamy white nails extended in length as she tickled Anko's chin. "I will make sure that you forget all about this day. It will be like this day never existed as part of your life." Kyuubi breathed a flowery essence into Anko's face, immediately making Anko lightheaded. A few moments later, Anko's consciousness was taken away from her. "When you wake up, you will continue to live your life as if nothing happened." With that, Kyuubi went back to cuddling with her husband while she carried him back to his house. This is of course after she reverted back to her human form. She wouldn't want to cause her husband any more trouble than he already had. She loved him too much for that. That night, after sneaking into Tsunade's house and then to Naruto's room undetected, Kyuubi gently laid her Naruto-kun down on the soft feathered bed, while she sat beside him and cradled his head in her huge ass as a sign of supreme affection. She only had him in her heart, and now that they were married no one would ever dare to separate the two of them. "I suppose the issue of having children can wait. For now, my lovely Naruto-sama, you need to rest." With that, Kyuubi pulled the covers over her and Naruto. Seconds later, a heavenly breathing could be heard from within the covers, forever mixing their essences together as both of them drifted off into a blissful state of tranquility. For both Kyuubi and Naruto, this day would be forever remembered as well as valued. For both Naruto and Kyuubi, life was perfect. Both of them had found their perfect person. Tsunade's room. "I think it's time for my son to partake in the senior Junin selection exams." Warmth like no other, a feathered substance rested patiently on his cheek. What was this sensation that ravaged his face with such soothing comfort? Too great was the alluring essence of the scent of some wild flowery fragrance, that the resulting conclusion was rather interesting. His mind couldn't resist the appealing weight that sat perched on the side of his face. It felt like an angel had graced him with her presence. He tried desperately to respond in some acceptable manner, but later found that such a simple task was quite difficult to realize. He struggled vigorously with the burden that was his physical wounds. It was breathtakingly laborious for him. His whole body felt increasingly frigid. The blankets heaved upon his broken physique did little to generate some reliable source of heat. Perhaps this was the lingering effects of the gruesome chest wound he had acquired yesterday. One thing was for certain, this entire ordeal was definitely stressful for him. Regardless, Naruto had to regain his conscience. He had to give thanks to the person who had so graciously taken him in and treated him with hospitality. Struggling against his heavy eyelids that refused to cooperate, Naruto barely established contact with the world that was, only moments ago, so far away from him. Realization had dawned upon him the moment he opened his eyes. Their eyes locked with each other. A crimson mixture of depth and beauty matched so perfectly with the mysterious sparkling sapphire. They were indeed a perfect pair for one another. The blissful moment could not last, however. Kyuubi was just too worried about him to let any trivial distractions keep her from her true motive. Her angelic voice rang through the air, leaving behind it a trail of nostalgic desires. "I'm so glad you're awake now." Genuine worry was evident in her facial features. Those pleading eyes held within them the vast oceans of her undying love. It was only too blatant. Naruto couldn't help but feel proud of his Kyuubi-chan. To be so transfixed and resolved in loving him, that was a sort of dedication that belonged solely to his Kyuubi. No one else could ever hope to possess it. Naruto had to reply. He couldn't keep Kyuubi in that panicky state. That would be inhuman. Naruto just had to give her reassurance that he was fine. He tried to maneuver his lips in a certain fashion that would convey his message to her. Slowly, through heavy, laborious breaths, Naruto articulated his rational massage. "Don't worry about me, Kyuubi-chan. I'm fine thanks to you." Naruto knew what to do next. This would drive his point home for sure. Carefully, Naruto withdrew his concealed arm from under the coverings as he gently cupped Kyuubi's cheek. Naruto utilized his other arm as he pulled slightly upon Kyuubi, drawing her in his embrace. The tension that was at first realized quickly dissipated as Kyuubi established herself comfortably within her husband's divine protection. Naruto caressed her hair at a moderate speed. The intervals between his breaths tickled Kyuubi's flesh as she wiggled further into the deeper regions that still lay uninhabited. Her own arms encircled her husband's neck as she pulled him closer to her incredible mounds. Kyuubi couldn't resist kissing her Naruto-kun over and over again. This was her way of an apologetic approach. Well, not exactly, she would have kissed him feverishly even if he wasn't hurt. Now that Kyuubi had Naruto-kun, she wasn't even going to consider leaving him. She would never again pride herself on her supposed title of queen. To her, the title was but a shallow facade that shielded her until now. She had no need for such childish acknowledgments. All that she lived for now was her Naruto-kun. That was, after all, the reason she escaped from her imprisonment. Kyuubi still had to make sure that Naruto was alright. She was just too worried to put any events from the previous night to rest. She needed to make for certain that Naruto was indeed unhindered by that atrocious wound that was inflicted upon his masculine chest. As if afraid, Kyuubi let but a meager trace of her emotions slip out in the form of a brief sob. She quickly recollected her composure as she spoke, yet again in that angelic voice that Naruto loved so much. "Naruto-kun, I'm sorry. Please find it in your heart to forgive me. I don't want." Kyuubi paused as tears welled up along the brim of her eyes. "I don't want you to ever despise me." Kyuubi wouldn't cry. This was but a minuscule occurrence. She had an image to uphold. She couldn't just expose her weak side. Yet still, she managed to sob openly. This was indeed how much love Kyuubi held for her husband. Able to let herself cry openly into his arms without a second thought. She didn't want to seem weak, not by a long shot. This was Naruto, the one she loved boundlessly. To her, Kyuubi could show everything to Naruto. Her emotions were not excluded. Noticing her unease, Naruto immediately took the initiative to comfort his wife. He hated witnessing an emotionally broken female in front of him, especially if the female in question happens to be his own wife. This would definitely not do. "Kyuubi-chan, I give you my word that I'll always love and cherish you. So you don't have to worry anymore, okay? All I need is some rest." Naruto tried to sound like a tough guy, unfazed by pitiful emotions, but in the end he resumed his original demeanor. Noticing that the liquid had ceased to flow, Naruto continued on. He didn't say a single word, instead he just held onto Kyuubi as she snuggled against his chest. Kyuubi instantly calmed. She gave a nod of confirmation as she delved deeper into her husband's encirclement. On the receiving end of the message, Naruto could only smile. All he could do was continue holding her. She was still rigged with guilt at the incident that occurred yesterday. If only there was some way to reassure her without sounding like some poor excuse for a pun of some sort. Exhaustion was taking him again. Why was this happening? Why was he so weak? Naruto was in turmoil, desperately combating to stay but a moment longer in the land of the waking, yet somehow he just wanted to give in to the enticing offer that sleep offered to him. If a person was extremely observant, she could have picked at the expression of hidden anguish expressed mildly in those eyes of his. Just like that, Naruto held onto Kyuubi, as if for an alternate source of strength. A cooling breeze bathed the couple, tranquility washed over the room. It was a piece of heaven for both of them. Though, somehow it mattered not. As long as they could stay like this, any price that they had to pay would be acceptable. They were about to be richly compensated with a never-ending life together. Yet, it wouldn't be without hardships and pains. They were going to stay with each other. No question could be posed to their reality. Nothing would be able to drive them apart, all except one. Somewhere unknown, seated agitatedly on his throne, a male of moderate age, appearing somewhere in his 30s. He was basked in the presence of the most gorgeous-looking servants that had no comparison. Totally unparalleled, though the scenery was somewhat impeded by the unbearable stench that emanated from the surroundings. The male in question had vibrant, acceptable lengthened hair, crimson in color. His physical proportion was quite impressive. In relation to someone very familiar, he sported 2 large purple gashes across his muscular stomach, and though concealed from view, he also possessed 2 gashes of purple across his thighs. Perhaps it was by mere coincidence, but whoever this person was, he bared a striking resemblance to Kyuubi. Though, certainly his arrogance was foreign to his expected behavior. How dare she reject me? I ranked number 1 as the most desirable husband in the entire demon realm, rated by none other than her own parents. Ever since she was sealed inside that, the male paused for a brief moment before he seemingly found the correct words. Idiotic flesh bag, she's been mesmerized with him. There is no way anyone could be hotter than me. That I can guarantee. Yet, why did she refuse to come back to the demon realm when I contacted her? She must already know of her father and mother's wishes to wed her to me. The male was in a quandary. Sparking a sort of grim determination, the male articulated his thoughts to no one in particular. I will bring you back and then marry you. This is both my and your parents' wish. I, the absolute irresistible demon, stand here today proudly to proclaim that you will be my. He was indeed a strange one. After his long-winded self-proclamation, he sprouted into an anime-style laughing fit with only the slightest hint of stupidity. Soon after finishing his preparations, the still nameless male set off to the human world. His target, Uzumaki Naruto. Much to Naruto's insistence on taking care of himself, Kyuubi wouldn't hear any of it. She was going to assume the role of wife nurse today. To her, taking care of her defenseless cute husband was a pleasure she reserved for herself. Now, Naruto-sama, you know that as the nurse assigned to you, I cannot allow you to do anything rash while incapacitated. Although Kyuubi lacked proper nurse attire, she did happen to have an extremely cute nurse head accessory. Not like that mattered anyway, since Kyuubi made even the simplest of fashion appear with unequaled flair and appeal. Her see-through silk top did nothing to conceal her bodily goods. This made Naruto very comfortable. As a man he couldn't help but love every second of it. Being treated by your own wife, who was willing to dress up as a nurse and not only that, but assume the part, was amazing to him. Good thing his mother wasn't here to witness this. He would undoubtedly be in for hell if she had known about this. Though, Naruto had his doubts. Tsunade had already been trying to marry him off for quite some time now. As to her position on this matter of being married prior to her knowledge, Naruto could only hope for the best. Just like that, Naruto obliged with Kyuubi's little role-playing game. So giving into his erotic fantasies, Naruto assumed the part of an obedient patient. Conversing and cooperating with Kyuubi were 2 of the many things that Naruto wanted to do with his wife nurse. He later reconsidered. Naruto and Kyuubi had eternal life after all. It definitely wasn't beneficial to spend a never-ending existence inhabiting the same house with an emotionally provocative demon female. As they say, a moment's fulfillment is often not worth the troubles later on. Tsunade's office. A groan of absolute agony echoed throughout the grand halls that provided passageways for all the various ninja that had business within the tower. Reality for these average people were harsh. Even for the female of the highest standing in the entirety of Konoha, life was harsh. As much as Tsunade attempted to rid herself of the emotionally straining papers that piled in hordes on her desk, she could not neglect her assigned duty as the 5th Hokage. Her usual beauty was not present today. The blondness of her hair seemed somewhat empty, it didn't do justice for her overall appearance. Hollowness was also blatantly present. As much as Tsunade established herself, she couldn't deny her burning desire to take on the role of the wanderer that she was known for. Those memories were priceless to her. The unhindered freedom, she would always cherish that. It was to no avail. Ever since she took on the job as the Hokage, it was always, meeting this, or, sign here Tsunade-sama. At first it was bearable, but as the cycle of time continued on, she could no longer deny the reality of things. She could no longer do whatever she desired. Instead, she was restricted to rules and regulations. The resulting effects were nothing short of devastating. Nostalgia was definitely an understatement. Tsunade hasn't been able to notice the ever-present changes that took place. Somehow, her genjutsu could only provide a dwindling image of a beautiful girl. On the inside, she was aging. The stress had accumulated in the form of increasing wrinkles, rigidness, and most of all, the thinness in her offsetting attitude. Unpleasant mood often results in full-blown arguments over even the most insignificant events. It was truly a massive undertaking unfit for one such as Tsunade. Her personality runs counter to the requirements of being a leader. Though, it could have also been due to the unwilling obligation of returning to Konoha that resulted in the eventual emotional shift. The growing hostilities that her former teammate turned traitor Orochimaru exhibited were still a very bitterly refreshing reoccurrence in her daily thoughts. Seemingly unable to forget about the moment when he cut ties with everyone that he once felt dear. Now, although Tsunade did not have any personal intimacy for Orochimaru, it was still rather difficult for her to accept the fate that had been handed to their team. After training together for all those years, it hit her quite hard. It left a sort of raw indentation, forever to plague the bearer. Forcibly elevating herself from depression, Tsunade attempted to stay focused. She had a lot to accomplish today. It hurt so badly on the inside, being condemned to an office. She was unable to see her son, she couldn't embrace him. Tsunade desired nothing but a life of blissful tranquility with her child, yet such a simple task seemed staggeringly unaccomplished. She could only endure the pain for now. Some random street in Konoha. The mail had finally arrived in the human world, a bit rigged from having to travel such a long distance but still in one piece. "Where are you, my beloved?" He had no common sense. He was positioned in a busy street with many bystanders eyeing him already due to his atrocious choice of clothing, yet he draws even more attention to himself by saying something that intimate out in the open. In short, he was an idiot. Still not noticing the weird facial expressions he was receiving. The male continued his call of love. Laughter soon erupted out in the streets as more people were drawn by the commotion. This later became a never-ending cycle. As more people witnessed his foolish cries, more people were drawn to it. Whispers rang throughout the gathering. Things like, "What's with this guy?" and "Mommy, I'm scared," were nothing short of common. Still, the laughter oppressed all other conversation. Suddenly the male stopped. With added agitation he fidgeted. "I can't believe I was being watched." For all his witty intellect and demonic superiority, this guy wasn't very bright. He beckoned incessantly for Kyuubi, all the while being completely unaware of his surroundings. He was hopeless. The citizens of Konoha, upon hearing that he had no prior knowledge of being observed, could only laugh harder. This infuriated the male. "Inferiors such as you dare to laugh at me." The way he spoke, added with the corny sentence, was really an open invitation for more laughter. Perhaps this male wasn't so piping hot after all. "No matter, my Kyuubi-heim will surely be able to detect my unrivaled power." What he didn't realize was that his ability as a demon left a lot to be desired. Kyuubi wouldn't be able to sense him even if she intended on doing so. His inability as an all-powerful being left others of the same race nothing less than disgraced. His occupation as a gatekeeper was really only given to him as a charitable favor owed. As for the servants, well, let's just say he nagged Kyuubi's father to the breaking point. Though, the one still unanswered question would remain a mystery for a little longer. Certainly at first glance the guy wouldn't qualify for the honor of marrying Kyuubi, not even for the next 10 millennia. Though, the reasons why Kyuubi's father allowed him to take his daughter's hand in marriage were still enveloped in a thick fog. Regardless, smirking, he proceeded to search. Leaving people dying of laughter was the only sign of any sort of recognition that he would ever receive. Naruto's room. "How's my lovely patient?" There was a hint of lustful seductiveness conveyed in that message. Naruto was sure of it. Though, the realization that Kyuubi loved to witness him defenseless was turning him on quite a bit. Naruto knew that Kyuubi would get really hot and horny whenever she was with him, which was always. That was already a proven fact, but with his movements restricted like this he couldn't really do anything if she decided to attempt something. Though, it wasn't like he would have taken offense. To him Kyuubi was everything. To him Kyuubi was the most beautiful of all living creatures, truthfully she was. She was the undisputed beauty of this world. Though, right now his thoughts would come to an abrupt end of sorts. Kyuubi sensually maneuvered her body over his as she established herself firmly on his muscular chest. Pinning both of his arms to the bed, she smirked. Certainly this was unnerving. Naruto had never witnessed this side of Kyuubi before, so dominant, so commanding. Yet, despite her new mood of sorts, Naruto could still identify her boundless love for him. He could only hope that she would go gently. Ever since yesterday evening, Kyuubi no longer retracted her tail or ears. It was a hassle for her to utilize chakra for something as meaningless as her demonic appearance. She was certain that Naruto loved her for who she was, not what she looked like. That is the essence of true love, to be able to accept your respective other without stressing over the insignificant details. Kyuubi-chan, I don't think I can provide you with your desired pleasure. Well, at least for the duration of my injuries. There was grim sarcasm in that sentence. Naruto was about to continue when he was effectively silenced by Kyuubi's tail. It perched laxly, managing to conceal Naruto's mouth effectively. Shish, it's okay Naruto-kun. You don't have to satisfy me in your condition. I'm yours now. You can pleasure me for an eternity once you rejuvenate your wounded body. For now, let your wife pleasure you. She gently placed her finger on his lips. Her pearly long nails tickled his flesh somewhat. Naruto had to brace himself for some blood. After all, Kyuubi-chan did have very intimidating nails. They could excavate blood at even the slightest of dabbles. It was surprising, feeling Kyuubi's nails caress his face so tenderly, yet there was no blood. Naruto re-established himself as he leveled his eyesight with his Kyuubi-chan's. They held so much love for him that it was only natural she would feel the need to ventilate her emotions. After all, to have that much love for one person, constantly bottled up inside you would do that to anyone. Being a demon that craved for erotic contact with her significant other only strengthened this desire. You don't have to fear my nails Naruto-kun, they wouldn't inflict a wound upon you. Kyuubi giggled at the expression that her husband showcased. Kyuubi had no intention of making Naruto terrified of her, actually quite the opposite. Kyuubi had to admit though, it was still rather amusingly adorable to witness him in that state. Naruto-kun, my index finger is somewhat sore, mind enveloping it in your mouth for me? There was definitely a double meaning conveyed in her seductive message. Naruto was absolutely positive of that, though he had no strength to raise a debate over it. Kyuubi desperately desired to feel as close with her husband as humanly possible. She had so many emotions bottled up within her that she needed to express it. Otherwise, her often sadistic and not to mention violent love for her Naruto-kun mood swings would start to take affect, that would definitely be entirely undesirable. Certainly when she needed pleasure her first and only choice would be to engage in erotic teasing of sorts with her only partner, Naruto. Without waiting for any kind of confirmation, Kyuubi parted Naruto-kun's lips sensually. She lowered her delicate frame so that it encompassed his as she kissed him, letting the velvet flesh intertwine with one another, losing herself completely in the sweet taste. Despite what many people seem to value as a fact, Kyuubi was absolutely repulsed by forcible, fast-paced UAL fulfillments. Instead, she loved a slow to moderate pace when love-making. Her maiden head, if you will, would not allow any shaft sizes that differentiated from Naruto's the honor of entrance into her interior flavors. In short, it was her absolute defense against being pregnant with any undesirable newborns. Remaining a virgin until the day Naruto summoned enough courage to grace her with their first child was of the absolute highest priority to her. She wanted nothing to do with anything else except her Naruto-kun. She was indeed addicted to him in every way. Likewise, Naruto was with her. They were the perfect match for each other. Unlike other couples who usually indulged in their UAL lives only once. Kyuubi and Naruto would usually have UAL encounters at least 3 times a day. To both of them it was the absolute norm to express their love through intimate contact. Back with that idiot, the self-proclaimed ultimate demon was rather unintelligent. For all his remarks of superiority, inferior races and such, he couldn't even uphold his own standards. He wasn't in the least bit superior to any of the human race, he was the one that was inferior. He was lost. I seemed to have ventured into unknown territory. It was always amusing to witness him speak in a sophisticated tongue. Though, being a demon did have its rules and regulations. Having been forced to speak in the higher class tone, for the majority of his life, he couldn't very well abandon it now, could he? Though, he should really learn to grasp the atmosphere sometimes. Pardon my sudden intrusion, but do any of you delinquents happen to know where a stunning demon mistress is located? He should really have picked a better descriptive term. What you calling us? Certainly their linguistic skills could use some refining. Though having to live in an underfunded district was a major cause of such a problem. As they say, you become like those you grow up with. Whether that be in a positive way or vice versa was all dependent upon the morals of the individual. Though, it would appear in this instance that it was in an extremely negative way. Having less than his share of common sense, the demon replied again. To him it was perfectly natural to call them delinquents, seeing as that was what they were. That was the way he was educated. To always be blunt, though, that revealed it to be a very hazardous trait of his. Do you delinquents know of a demon mistress with hair crimson? He was sure that they would answer him now. He didn't like to repeat himself, but seeing as he originated from a foreign land, he would have to respect the customs of the human world. Oh, how mistaken he would later prove to be. He was smug to the unbearable limit, waiting on the receiving end of the answer. No reply in the form of words had approached his ears. Instead, a searing pain had acquainted itself with his flesh, knocking him out cold upon contact. He had just so conveniently closed his eyes. Though, one aspect was shrouded in fog. He wasn't able to sense the impending assault. It could easily have been due to the insignificant chakra emanations exuded from his attackers. After all, not every inhabitant of Konoha had a career as a ninja. That gotta teach you some respect. Smirking, he and his associates retreated to whence they came, leaving the demon for dead. Naruto's room. Kyuubi and Naruto were currently in a kissing fest. They feasted in their respective essences, managing to lose themselves yet again. Being partially nude, Kyuubi had relieved herself of the silk top, albeit very reluctantly. Their bodies pressed up against the other as if for support. This was their first UAL engagement of the day. There were no forcible dominations. They both knew what the other was thinking, so it was quite conceivable for them to just click with each other. When one moved a certain way, the other would respond correctly. This again was a sure sign that both were destined to be together forever. Breathing in long soothing wisps, Kyuubi encircled Naruto's frame within her own body. She paused for a few seconds before she posed a question. Naruto-kun, do you mind if I take a bite of your neck? I promise that it will be painless. A confirmation comes in the form of a nod. It signaled the approval of Kyuubi's planned action. She steadied herself as she bit into Naruto's flesh. It was more than a mere nibble but lacked the pressure of a full-blown bite. Kyuubi was in absolute heaven. To be this intimate with her husband was a pleasure she yearned to experience for a long time. She absolutely loved it. This would definitely have to be added to their daily routines in the near future, say tomorrow? Kyuubi became more feral by the minute, her more reserved attitude being forgotten at this moment. The animalistic instincts were establishing a firm grip on her judgment. The more prolonged the bite became, the closer Kyuubi would shuffle her body towards her husband. She desired nothing but to embrace Naruto to death. Kyuubi was losing herself to the heat of this extremely intimate moment. Finally, as if having had her fill of Naruto's flesh, her lips parted from his neck. There was a raw bite mark inscribed upon the flesh. As her lips parted from his neck, a trail of silky saliva could be seen stretching from her tongue, still being attached to Naruto's neck. There was a heavy lustful blush apparent in Kyuubi's features. She needed to ventilate her emotions. Tears of oppressed affection beamed to the brim of her eyes. That was my love for you, baby. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. She was breaking apart with emotions too foreign for her to distinguish. Kyuubi could no longer hold her tears. Flinging herself upon Naruto's chest, she hid her face within the warm confines of Naruto's tear-soaked shirt. I love you so much. I can't bear to witness someone taking you away from me. Just like that, Kyuubi would repeat her love for her one and only over and over again. She wouldn't and couldn't take chances now. After the events of the previous night with that fish-netted slut, Kyuubi would have to accompany Naruto, wherever he wished to go from now on. Responding in kind, Naruto encircled Kyuubi's delicate body as he laid a kiss of reassurance upon her forehead, instantly snapping her out of the breakdown. Embracing her tightly within his arms, Naruto spoke. "Kyuubi-chan, you're such an idiot, don't ever think something so profoundly preposterous. I won't leave you for anything in this world." Realizing Kyuubi's embrace had tightened gave him the response he desired. Back to the unconscious demon. What was this blinding flash of white? I don't particularly remember what happened. I felt something very heavy establish contact with the back of my head and then nothing. The idiot demon was once again returning to the world of the waking, although very groggily. His vision was severely distorted. Those mortal fools, they have guts to attack a superior demon gatekeeper. That's unheard of. His own words ran counter to his supposed status. For such a superior demon, watching over a gate all day sure seems unbefitting. Then again, he didn't exactly know full well what he was talking about. The demon slowly stood and dusted himself of the filth that had accumulated on his leather clothing. No matter, this is but a minor setback to delay the inevitable. I will find Kyuubi-heim. Afterwards, a crazed laugh sounded, for no apparent reason. Perhaps this demon really did find a lot of fancy in the whole evil mastermind that laughs whenever he did something. Movie genres. Finally calming his hysteria, the demon steadied his emotions. Soon after, the sound of clinking heels could be heard. Tsunade's office. Naruto's alcoholic mother was at it again. Tsunade's voice was the only thing that could be heard throughout the administration building, in which she busied herself constantly with paperwork. At this exact moment though, her urge of a soak in the hot springs could not be denied. "Shizune, you're going with me. We're going to relax. Send for Naruto as well. I have something very important that I wish to relay to him personally." With that said, Tsunade barged through the locked door, much to the dismay of the Anbu and her assistant. There was going to have to be a new door installed. Being forcibly bound to her office for the majority of her Hokage career had left Tsunade with a burning desire to escape, which had only risen in magnitude with the passing of the seasons. There was no way she could let up an opportunity to escape her duties as Hokage, if only for a little while. This was especially the case on humid days, such as today. Having been given strange and terrified looks on her way out, made her experience a sense of accomplishment. Though in truth, it couldn't really be called an accomplishment. It was more along the lines of being fear-driven. Passing Neji on the way out, Shizune quickly signaled for his attention, briefing him about the Hokage's wishes to meet with her son, thus implying for him to retrieve Naruto. Afterwards, Shizune tailed Tsunade from closely behind. She was ever so alert, on the lookout for any signs of change that might appear. There was none, much to her disappointment. Tsunade was for the most part a straightforward female. Once her mind was set on achieving a certain goal, there would be no opposition from anyone. As a Hokage and her assistant steadily disappeared from the line of sight, only one person was left standing. Neji sighed. He felt sorry for Shizune, he truly did. He could only imagine what it would be like to spend all that effort to appease Tsunade's demands. One thing was for certain, there would be no way he could become her assistant and live to not only sustain but enjoy it. That fact alone made him shudder. For him to have to endure Tsunade's break-driven mood swings would definitely be too much. Right now though, he couldn't exactly effort the time to draw forth complex self-discussions. He had a job to accomplish. That's all for now. If you enjoyed, then please like, share and do comments.